Hello, back with some Blood in the Gutter from Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. Yes, Chapter 3, Blood in the Gutter, which is all about, okay, we've got this idea of comics as being the juxtaposed pictorial and other images in deliberate sequence intended to convey information and or produce an aesthetic response in the viewer. So it's one picture and another picture, but what McCloud in this section is talking about is how that gap between the two pictures is what gives comics its power, is what it enters into this relationship with a reader who looks at the first image and then looks at the second image and makes the transition themselves. That can be as simple as the guy with the top hat holding the hat like this, and then in the next image holding it like that. As the reader of a comic, you make this motion. The comic doesn't. The comic just goes like this, and then the comic goes like this. It's two different pictures, but you make the thing. And he says comics very much is closure. It is that thing of the human being's tendency to fill in the information. He makes he makes the connection with in visual things like TV or in movies. We have a thing called persistence of vision, where that kind of that little quirk of human psyche allows us to see moving pictures, even though it's actually just single pictures rapidly reproduced, that make us give the illusion of motion. The comics does something similar, not identical to that, in its thing of it showing you one image and then another. He lists six specific types of closure. There's moment-to-moment action, where a woman can be just with their eyes open, eyes shut, eyes open. That's a moment to moment. An action thing, he shows a baseball player who's getting ready to hit in the first one, and then in the second one has hit the ball. So it's from one action, getting ready to hit, to hitting the next action. Number 5 is from subject to subject. I think that one he shows one a guy raising an axe to kill someone, and the other guy going no no no. That's one picture, and then the next picture is a cityscape with a scream across it going ah, which you fill in what's happened. That swing has probably been completed, and you've gone from one subject to another. Subject scene to scene is like, that can just simply be a scene change, going from your downtown here to you're out in the country there. Number 5 is from aspect to aspect, which is sort of it's all the same scene, but you're maybe it's a wandering eye that's focusing on different bits of that scene. I think he shows like a little Christmas tree with decorations and stuff, and then the next picture is of a little toy Santa Claus, and that's like, oh, we've zoomed in on one, we've changed from one aspect of the scene to another aspect of the scene. Or you could be like, I think they have a one of it's a sunny day where you have a picture of the sun, you have trees with birds, you have a guy, and then the next one is you have a guy lying back with sunglasses on, kind of basking in the sunlight. It's from aspect to aspect. And then number 6 is a non sequitur, where you just go from one completely unrelated thing to another. I think in this he shows like there's an image of a fork actually is in the middle of his explanation of a non sequitur, and just showing the power of how your mind will often still try and make sense of that. Try and make it's like, oh, it's like a forking of reality or something like that. You can see that sort of thing. So he very much emphasizes, it's the reader. This is an effect that a comics artist will use to exploit to get, it's the reader's participation, whether it's from moment to moment to a non sequitur, or action to action, or subject to subject. That is all using what the reader's mind does. This is what the comic artist is using to construct this thing, much like having a circle with two dots and a line, we have a tendency to just project a face into that, immediately, which it's hard not, and saying like, it's hard not to. He goes through how various comics in comic traditions actually kind of lean on the various types, finding that actually there's quite a commonality between between like American and Western things of like, it's 65% action to action, 20% subject to subject, and 15% scene to scene, and then oftentimes not any moment to moment or aspect to aspect or non sequitur in that. But actually in like the Japanese stuff, there can be a lot more variation. Or in experimental comics, it shows Art Spiegelman's anthology breakdowns, where it has much more of other things. And then you look at Japanese comics, there's a lot more of the very moment to moment, because a lot of this is their space constraints are as such that actually they're producing a huge works, and therefore they have the time, and also maybe that kind of an inclination. It's like aspect to aspect transitions have been an integral part of Japanese mainstream comics from the beginning, often used to establish a mood or a sense of place. Time seems to stand still in these quiet contemplative combinations. So it's got, you can see there's much more of there's a fairly deep reason why stuff like this is actually is getting used. What else do I want to talk about? He has a really cool thing here about, just about showing an example of the story. And it's a story of, promise me you won't drink and drive, and it ends with R.I.P. Carl at the end of it. But you've got the variations on it of going from promise me you won't drink and drive, R.I.P. to promise me you won't drink and drive, R.I.P. to promise you won't drink and drive, R.I.P. to just the very end. It's just those two panels. But all of these panels, this one has the most number, and it has moment to moment stuff. It has aspect stuff. It has various, it includes various other bits of the story in there. And then you can see this kind of getting honed down and honed down and honed down. So it's like very much the art of comics is as much subtractive an art as additive. And finding the balance between too much and too little is a crucial to comics creators the world over. And to strike that balance, creators regularly make assumptions about the reader's experience. And some of those might seem pretty safe, but stuff like reading right to left in Japanese comics, it's going from we read left to right. Japanese comics read right to left, and even just like the assumption of how you arrange your panels, and even prose can mess this up and confuse the reader as to how they're actually supposed to read it, or maybe there's various ways of reading it. But it's closure can be a powerful force within panels as well as between them. When artists show only a small piece of the picture, so there's all these different things that here where it's only sound effects. It's like suddenly everything disappears and all you get are the sound effects going on, and how that is working. The idea of getting sensory data in comics. I mean, comics are strictly a visual medium, but especially like in a old-fashioned, like in this, where it's like, oh, there's a bubbling pot, there's chopping, there's the woman who is doing the chopping, there's like a little tick-tick sound. So, and it's like, are all these sounds only happening for each of these panels, or because this is like, because of the kind of this being this being much more aspect to aspect. This is all one scene, all happening at the same time, and there's a bubbling, chopping, tick tick ticking sound all while this woman's in the kitchen. So it's bringing in other all the other senses between the panels, where like your imagination fills in engages all these senses. He has a thing here about how perhaps closure is more difficult when it's a realistic thing. He shows a picture of like a very cartoony, of like a guy kind of thinking, then noticing, and then a girl waving, and then him waving back. With a more realistic one, he says that it's more difficult in the realistic one to actually kind of believe that, which I don't know if I get. I get it maybe more from that one, where it's more visually abstract. We're getting higher up on that triangle of the pictorial image, but that's almost just because it's harder to kind of make visual sense of that this guy here is this guy here is that guy there. I find that one, that's just more, it seems more abstract, so I have a hard time actually seeing it as a guy there. It would have to do more concentration. So I do have to have more concentration on this, so maybe it is more difficult. I don't find it with a realist picture it's any more difficult to that. And but the closure's happening, but not without effort, which, I mean, that's when you get into the whole thing of, do you want something that's going to flow beautifully easily, or do you want to make the reader really work? Which, different people, as he says here, we've got the avant-garde person versus just the storyteller, and what your goals are there. But yeah, the comic creators ask us to join in a silent dance of the seen and unseen, the visible and invisible. And that dance, he claims, is unique to comics. No other art form gives so much to its audience while asking so much from it. And this is why I think it's a mistake to see comics as a mere hybrid of graphic arts and prose fiction. What happens between the panels is kind of magic only comics can create. Which I think, and he does point out that, like, the only thing that maybe does that in a degree as well is straight, written prose literature, which I guess you could just say it's activating it on a different realm, in that you're going strictly with lit symbols, icon. You're going strictly into the realm of language, where it definitely has its own ambiguity that the reader projects themselves into and fills in the picture, and that is as subtractive. But that a similar thing does happen in comics, and having that, like, oh, here's a little slice, and then there's another slice, and then what's in between of you filling stuff in is very much a comics thing. And I guess it's a matter of what's the goal of the artist, how ambitious they want to be, how much they want the reader to work at it when they're reading a comic. So yeah, that is section 3, Blood in the Gutter. Comics, Blood in the Gutter, which is, it's that thing to really kind of, I think, as a reader to focus on. It's like, okay, be aware that this is a constructed thing that you are constructing along with the cartoonist. The cartoonist, who is obviously, if they're really skilled, are trying to manipulate you. It just is like a great writer tries to manipulate you with language to evoke a certain response out of you. So yeah, I've been Jay. More videos later.